Hello all, Mike O'Reilly here from O'Reilly's Corner, where we aim to keep the lights on current critical issues as well as on past egregious acts, of which there are plenty. As of today, there's been no ruling from the Supreme Court on the issue of Trump's tariffs. The two key legal questions from the court are: can Congress delegate by statute authority to the President of the United States? And secondly, whether or not the President has the power to unilaterally impose tariffs under this 1977 law known as, even though that statute never mentions the word tariffs, and it's never been used previously to impose tariffs. This matters. Actually, tariffs are critical to the U.S. for two big reasons: money and leverage. One is economic, the other is political. They overlap more than people realize, but the political muscle born out of tariffs are far more important than any economical advantage. And that's exactly the argument that Trump's lawyers, in my opinion, brilliantly presented to the Supreme Court last week. Stick with me to the end of this and find out the three possible outcomes of this case, this all-important case. And I'll tell you which one I think is most likely. Oh, and please, just click below the like and subscribe button. It helps me immensely, and it doesn't cost you anything. No obligations, nothing. Just click on them and be done. So why is this issue of tariff so important to President Trump and to the U.S., you and me? Because tariffs have been immensely beneficial to us. They're working, in spite of ignorant naysayers like Hakeem Jeffries, as you'll see.
CNBC has celebrated a major economic win for the United States economy. Data from the Commerce Department released on January 8th showed Trump's tariffs have played a pivotal role in cutting the US trade deficit from a peak of $136 billion in March 2025 to just under $30 billion in October 2025. The trade deficit was driven by a 3.2% import drop after Trump threatened tariffs on the pharmaceutical sector and a 2.6% export rise.
Buckle up. This is unreal. The movement in this number, minus 29.4 billion. We cut it basically in half. Just consider this. In March, it was 136 billion. Right now, it's a whisker under 30 billion. We haven't been that small in a long time. I don't have enough records here to go back that far, but you're going back a ways. And here's the news on why it moved lower.
The data shows the lowest trade deficit since 2009. Donald Trump confirmed his tariff policies were working in a Truth Social post saying, "Breaking news, numbers released today show the United States of America has the lowest trade deficit since 2009 and going even lower. In addition, our nation's gross domestic product, GDP, is predicted to come in at over 5%, and that is after losing at least 1.5% to the Democrat shutdown. These incredible numbers and the unprecedented success of our country are a direct result of tariffs, which have rescued our economy and national security. I hope the Supreme Court is aware of these historic country-saving achievements prior to the issuance of their most important ever decision." Speaker Mike Johnson backed President Trump's tariffs, saying, "Thanks to President Trump, other countries are not taking advantage of America anymore." Huge announcement: the US trade deficit with countries just fell to its lowest level since 2009. This did not happen by accident. President Trump's trade agenda is delivering real results. Exports up, imports down, and American workers finally getting a fair shake. And whilst the news is a welcome surprise for the US economy and its people, it has further exposed the incompetence of the Democrats. Hakeem Jeffries went on MSNBC in April of 2025 and said the end result of the tariffs will be historically bad.
Leader Jeffries, while we were on air, you had the president saying this on Truth Social. This is an economic revolution and we will win. Hang tough. It won't be easy, but the end result will be historic. Do you think he means historic good or historic bad?
Well, the end result will definitively be historically bad. These Trump tariffs represent the largest tax increase on the American people since at least 1968. What we're seeing is that he is crashing the economy in real time. Costs are going up. The Trump tariffs are likely to result in thousands of dollars in additional costs on the American people in terms of groceries and gas and goods. And at the same time, we're seeing the retirement savings of the American people plummeting as well. This guy is driving us toward a recession. And this is not what the American people voted for or expected.
This commentator blasted Jeffries, saying, "Every time Rep. Jeffries opens his mouth, he demonstrates how unqualified he is to serve in Congress." And the economic good news just kept coming for the US, with economist Daniel Lacalle revealing strong growth. He said, "Remember the tariff tantrum? The US economy is growing faster than any G7 peer. Atlanta Fed GDP now estimate for annualized growth for the fourth quarter rises to 5.4%. Yes, 5.4%.
So without tariffs, cheaper imports can and do flood the U.S. market and push U.S. firms out of business. Then these foreign corporations can and will raise prices. So when people say that tariffs makes goods more expensive, yeah, I suppose, but in the short term. But when competition disappears because U.S. companies are forced out of business, prices will surely rise. And once these U.S. firms disappear, they usually don't come back. Tariffs just buy a little time and a little breathing room for our domestic companies, our factories, farms, even if they raise prices in the short term. You know, economists argue about how effective tariffs are or aren't, but politically, they send a signal that we are protecting American workers. And that's where tariffs really become effective. Right now, we're being stifled with huge tariffs on U.S. exports. But because the U.S. is the largest consumer market in the world, access to that valuable market is indispensable for other countries. Tariffs threaten access, which gives the U.S. enormous leverage that so far, or recently, we haven't been using, at least not to the full scale. President Trump knows how to use it. He is using it. Recent events like the Chinese pandemic expose just how risky it is to rely on foreign suppliers. I mean, historically, tariffs were a major source of revenue. We didn't even pay federal income tax in the past. Today, income tax dominate. We know that, painfully. But tariffs still bring in billions of dollars, hundreds of billions of dollars. So yeah, there's a trade-off, yes. Tariffs are powerful, but they're not great. They usually raise prices to the consumer, at least in the short run. And they trigger retaliation from other countries that go for it. The bottom line, though, is that tariffs matter because they sit at the crossroads of economics, politics, and power. So a few moments ago, I said that tariffs raise revenue, hundreds of billions of dollars for the U.S. And that's true. But let's not forget the main goal or purpose of tariffs. In fact, the attorneys for Trump before the Supreme Court brilliantly argued that tariffs are not a tax at all, but a regulatory tariff, which would put it squarely under President Trump's purview, and that they actually work at peak if no revenue whatsoever is collected. I think that was brilliant argument, but I guess we'll see how many justices were moved. They moved me. As for key legal questions before the court, the two key legal questions that I mentioned, can Congress delegate tariff authority to the President of the United States by statute? Number one. Number two, whether or not the President has the power to unilaterally impose tariffs relying on this 1977 law, the so-called IEEPA, even though that statute never mentioned tariffs and it's never been previously used to impose tariffs. Well, Congress can delegate tariff authority to the President by statute, but there are constitutional limits, and that's exactly what the current Supreme Court fight is about. The Constitution gives Congress the power, and I'll quote, to lay and collect taxes, duties, imports, and excise. Section 8 of Article 1. Tariffs are duties. So Congress has that power. That's established. Yeah. Congress also has delegated some tariff authority to the President through statutes in the past, and the Supreme Court has consistently allowed this delegation so long as Congress provides, in the Supreme Court words, an intelligible principle that guides how the President can use these powers. Now, this has been accepted law for centuries, a very strong precedent. Congress has passed other statutes allowing the President to impose tariffs under specific conditions. The Trade Expansion Act, which was for the steel and aluminum industries, so national security. The Trade Act of 1974, which was imposed in response to unfair trade practices. That might be a good one. And the safeguard tariffs, allowing temporary protection to industries facing sudden import surges. These laws were specific, though. They spelled out when, where, and how tariffs can be imposed. President Trump relied heavily, really solely, on the International Emergency Economic Power Act. The problem, this act, IEEPA, never explicitly mentions the word tariffs, and it was designed for sanctions or to freeze assets, not for tariffs. So can Congress delegate its tariff power this broadly without any meaningful limits? Well, there's such a thing as the non-delegation doctrine. Congress cannot just hand over one of its legislative powers. If a statute gives the President no clear standard, no real constraint, and no meaningful oversight, it's probably unconstitutional. If a policy has vast economic and political significance, as these tariffs surely do, the court expects clear authorization from Congress, clearly worded, and they expect congressional oversight. So how do I think the court will decide? Well, as I said, there were three options. I think the court is very unlikely to say Congress can never delegate tariff authority. That would just upend decades, almost a century, of precedent. And I don't think that the court will declare that all previous tariffs were illegal and you have to figure out a way to refund a couple of $100 billion. I don't think that's going to happen. So I don't think that they're going to just declare tariffs are legal. I don't think that they're going to declare that all tariffs so far were illegal and that we'd have to return hundreds of billions of dollars to who, I'm not sure. So the more likely outcome, in my humble opinion, yes, Congress can delegate the tariff authority to the president, and the president's prior tariffs were proper and enforceable. But AIPA doesn't cut it. One size doesn't fit all. It's too vague to support these sweeping global tariffs. In other words, delegation, yes. Blank check, no. So I'm not a constitutional attorney. I'm an attorney, but I'm not a constitutional attorney. And I do love our president, and I'm very grateful for all that he does. But I love our Constitution even more. I'm squarely and unabashedly in the president's corner, so long as he can find a way to use these tariffs, or at least a threat of tariffs, constitutionally. I think he can, but not relying on this overly broad statute of AIPA. I really think the best thing that we can hope for is that the court allows the past tariffs to stand, but shoot down any future tariffs that rely on this AIPA law. The president's team need to look for other statutes, and there are other statutes out there, and they include the word tariff. And these other statutes have been previously used to impose tariffs by the president. The other way is to go back to Congress and get broader, clearer authority in a new statute to impose tariffs. By the time I post this, and by the time you watch it, the Supreme Court may have already announced their decision. And I'll either look like a genius or like an ass. So leave a comment below, please. Let me know which one I am. I hope you guys enjoyed being here as much as I enjoyed having you on O'Reilly's Corner. Let's keep the lights on together. Mike O'Reilly from O'Reilly's Corner.